Now this is the BIMOTA repair part 3. I want to start on these fairing parts. I really only just want to do one set at this time. But the basic sanding of them and getting them cleaned up, that'll be hopefully in this work session, that'll be what we'll be able to accomplish. The seat came out nice. That worked out nice. The hugger is just like a piece of jewelry. And we're still waiting for the decals on that part. And we got our tire lube in the mail. So hopefully these projects, both Mark's and this one, are moving along because the riding season is coming up very, very soon. And that tire needs to go on the 650. Now there's a long story to this motorcycle. Vlad had gotten, this is a Benelli. I think it's a 900, but I'm not sure what other models they make. Now, I had done the track work bodywork because this originally was a track bike. Did the track work bodywork. The bodywork was terrible. It looked like it sunk with the Titanic, and it was in a Bermuda Triangle for a year. This is his, believe it or not, this is the good bodywork. Now, he has used some kind of paint remover or something on here, but I am going to have to be ultimately careful that we haven't left any residue on here before we put on the first coat of primer. So the first step on this whole project, and I decided to do this before having my coffee this morning. This is the first step. Always get the simple green sprayed on, let it sit 5-10 minutes. Now the issue with this bodywork, this is the real bodywork that comes from Benelli. Keep in mind, this is a $20,000 motorcycle. So, and he's got 2 sets of bodywork, but because he's used paint remover on this and maybe other chemicals and who knows what, it's been my experience because Joe Cassie and I were partners in a machine shop that did molding. It did this type of work. And I know what happens from time to time to these parts. And for anybody that has never worked in a molding shop or doesn't know how it works, here's what I think happened, and maybe I'm totally wrong, but I've seen it happen in real life. When they mold a part like this, there's a male mold and a female mold. They come together under very high pressure and they inject liquid plastic. It cools over a cycle. They pull the mold apart and usually the part will stick to one side or the other and they have to peel it away. Well, they spray it with a mold release agent when we were making model airplane line reels, about every 10 cycles you had to spray the mold or you couldn't get the part out. So what would happen is, what I think happens with these parts, if you happen to hit one that's the first part molded after they mold the part and it's got all that release agent on it, then they paint it over there and who knows where they paint these, in India or Czechoslovakia or, who knows. See, this is all the unknown parts of the world, the way we live in. Parts are made all over the place. And so what happens is, now somebody that's a technician wipes this down with maybe not simple green, and the paint that was on here, and the paint was beautiful. It's a beautiful color green. But what would happen is you could put your finger everywhere there was a bolt. You could just pick the paint and pull off a postage stamp part of paint. But then when you went to pull the rest of the paint off, it didn't come off. It was stuck like iron. So bottom line is they just didn't do a good job prepping it in where, and I assumed the parts were made, they were made in Italy, maybe India. Benellis are made in India, some parts. But that's not always true. Sometimes they farm out these parts to, North Korea or something. Who knows? I don't really know. There's a lot of, I call it mystery meat. But to start with, any part that we're going to rehab, step 1 is to try to get everything, that silicone grease, mold release agent, former paint that was on here, and this is now, and I'm assuming this is only going to be and if I see this part is cracked. We got a repair on that already. But this becomes a labor of love to do these parts. These are really the essence of, you got to really want to do this. So I always look at the part first. I see it's cracked here. It's cracked around the bolt holes. If you see that, you can see that's cracked. Quite a bit of other stuff. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to get out some 400 grit sandpaper. And instead of mixing Dawn in with the soapy water, I'm going to make up a concoction of simple green and soapy water and 400 paper and see if I can put a bite into that surface. And we're using 400. Again, this is just a test because, again, a part like this, I'm just going to pick a part at random where it's not cracked. Let me get this. What I did, I mixed up some water with simple green. And I want to see how much it's going to take. What I want to do is etch the surface. And then I have this product called Bulldog that's supposed to, and I've never been real happy using Bulldog. It's not one of my favorite products, but our friend Mark at the Gavin's Paint suggested that would be the right product to use for this. We spoke to him when we bought the paint the last time we were in Gavin's with Vlad. So we're going to try the old Bulldog method now. You got to understand, this is very time consuming to get this whole part to look like this. And I want to show this up close and personal. Okay, there's what we're looking for. But now to do the whole part, get around all the edges, all the corners, all of this. And then repair this crack that's here. I'm going to repair that with CA, of course. All around here where the bolt holes are, it looks like that might be cracked. And this is the best of the four. So what this boils down to, this is going to be a tremendous labor of love to get the part to be degreased. And see, if they did this at the Benelli factory, this paint would never have come off. This job would never be necessary. But you can see what they did. They painted over a shiny part. Probably came right out of the mold. Figured, oh, what the heck. Nobody will know we didn't do the sanding on it. And I'll do the rest of this basically off camera, because this is going to be about an hour, hour and a half to get the whole part to look like that. And then that should be ready for our Bulldog and then our primer. Now, you may be thinking, and actually I was thinking too, why not just take one of those power sanders, and we have several, and just go at this with a power sander? Well, here's the problem with doing something like that. These parts are very, very thin, and I don't want to make them any more flexible than they are. And between the sanding and just making them thinner and thinner, I don't know that that's the answer. And plus, you really can't get around all the corners and edges and everything the way a flat piece would be. But if you don't get this part done right, if this is the part that if you skip over this and you think, we just paint right over that, you are really just wasting your time. Now, this is the other point too. Everywhere there's a radius edge, if you don't radius that edge off and get it smooth at the same time, what's going to happen? The paint is going to start peeling at an edge. That's one of the things of this. A job like this has to be done, and it's just time consuming, and you wish you had some power tool or something you could dip this in or something, but there's just no substitute for this. This is just going to be about 10 sheets of 400 paper, and I'm guessing an hour, between an hour and 2 hours a panel to get this part done. And I don't really care even if I only get one panel done today, because I don't want to get it that halfway through painting the green, and this green paint is beautiful paint, by the way, and it's expensive. I don't want to get to that point and then all of a sudden, bing, up comes some paint. Or even if that were to happen, I want to at least stack the deck in my favor. Now, this is one job where I really wish we had some Sikkens M600, because what's going to happen here is we put hours and hours into this sanding and prepping, and to degrease it and make sure there aren't going to be any fish eyes in this part, a major thing. Now, the problem is this part is all full of little cracks, and because it's so flexible, and modern paints are flexible. They do flex up to a certain point, the urethanes, but this part is just like a rubber band here. I don't know. But anyway, I think we got as much as we can off of this. And I'm going to go out. I have a little repair here. I'm thinking how I can do this. See, the problem is it's cracked, but it's not cracked all the way through. I think I'm just going to put some CA on it and hope for the best. And actually, on a job like this, boy, there is no guarantee. You're dealing with stage 4 cancer here. The only thing I can guarantee here is that this is going to be a lot of work. And guarantee we will try our best to get this back to looking beautiful. But again, it's just so much work with this, removing all the old stuff. Now, as I mentioned, this is Bulldog Adhesion Promoter for flexible parts like this. And to be honest, I really hate this stuff. But we're going to give it a try. And you do 2 coats, you let it dry in between coats. And then it'll be, in this heat today, it'll be ready in 5-10 minutes for some primer. One thing about this stuff, it has a really disgusting odor. But these parts, and boy, these are flexible. These are the most flexible fairing parts I've ever dealt with. And the Benelli track work, the track bike stuff was even worse. That's got to dry about 15 minutes, 10-15 minutes they say. I'll let it dry and give it a second coat. Just waiting for the second coat to dry here, and we'll be ready for the primer. This is the primer we always prefer to use on these projects. All we want is a light coat. Of course the wind has to be blowing, but I want to make sure I get all the edges primed. That's one of the important things. Now, a lot of people would be inclined to just go paint this right now once the primer dries. Well, I want this primer to dry overnight, and I want to then probably wet sand it out, because there are still a lot of little flaws in this. Now, if we were dealing with a brand new part with no dents, no scratches, no nothing, well, it'd be different. But since we've done so much prep on this, I think I'm going to try to make a little jig to hold this with the other tripod. I took out the old tripod. I remember with the track work, body work, we did have a way of holding this up, because it's awkward to, just not easy to grab. It doesn't matter, this is going to get sanded anyway, so we just get a light coat on. And that's basically going to dry overnight. Okay, that's our first panel in primer. And again, I always feel better if I let that primer dry overnight. And then what I'll consider doing tomorrow is just lightly wet sanding it with 600 or 1000 grit or something before I put on the paint. Now, here in a laundromat, and it's way over 90 degrees right now, I really don't have to let that dry overnight, but because I have the other part to sand, I'll use the rest of the time before we have to go get the baby, just to, I always feel better if it dries overnight. It's just old school stuff. Now, I just thought I'd try to do something with this tripod, try to come up with some way to hold the rest of the fairing parts, because we have 4 of them. It's going to pay to make some kind of a little jig or something to hold them. And they are very, very awkward to paint. It's difficult to paint them flat. You'd like to hold them straight up and down, especially priming them. And we'll see if we can come up with something when we do the next one. So here's the matching piece to the other side, and you can see this has to be repaired, sanded out, pretty much the same thing. What I'm going to try to do is use up the time I have left between now and the end of the day. Just get as much of this prepped as I can, and who knows, it may go faster than the first one, because it really did take me a long time to sand that first one down. 400 And what I did, I put plenty of, you can see the water's even yellow, plenty of the simple green in the water. And we'll see how this plays out when we get this one done. Now this part needed a little more sanding than the other one. There was quite a few little spots in there that just weren't perfect. But I think it's pretty good to go here, and I'm kind of glad. What happened in the middle of this day, I didn't realize was going to happen. They changed what time the baby was getting here, so I figured I'd use up the extra couple hours here. Usually we have him in the early afternoon. We're going to have him tonight, so we're going to have him like he's a hamburger. I don't know if that's the right thing, but he really is the love of our life. Anyway, it looks like I'm going to get this. I'm going to get the Bulldog and the primer and everything on here. I'm just as happy as could be that I got this much done. And it is so hot out there. It is just unbelievably hot. Karen went out to the store and she said in her car the little temperature thing was 97. So, Anyway, we're ready for the old Bulldog. Woof woof. Now as I'm waiting for this Bulldog to dry up here, I got the 2 coats on. I made this little attachment with a picture hanging wire so I could hold this. Maybe a big value somewhere down the road anyway. But it's definitely easier to paint it that way. Anyway, 2 coats of this adhesion promoter and we'll be ready for primer once that dries up. Well, we basically have both parts in primer here. Actually, it went pretty good. I shouldn't complain. No, it was quite a productive day getting both of these. I couldn't believe it. I was really hoping I'd get one. I got both of them in primer. This will sit overnight and we'll sand it probably with some 600, get it prepped up for the green paint or another coat of primer if there's flaws coming through. You never know till it dries, and it really is a good, I know you don't have to, but I always sleep better at night knowing that that primer has outgassed and it's totally dry. Well, the good news is these 2 parts I think are in a bank. And this, remember, this set of videos started out as being the BIMOTA set of videos, and it's transitioned into the Benelli set of videos. But 2 more pieces of bodywork. We're not going to get on that right away. I want to get my goal is to get 2 pieces done, and this way Vlad can put the bike back together, since this is now his street bike. And as soon as that's done, we can transition into finishing up Mark's parts for him. We have the paint, and then probably the lowest priority here, swapping out the tire. It's looking like it started out to be a very, very busy summer, and I can't wait for the riding season. It's actually here already. Anyway, hope you enjoyed the video, and thanks for watching.